Hi everybody, I'm Katrina. I have a topic that I find absolutely fascinating to share with you today. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I have. My topic is on Artemis Ephesia, also known as Artemis of Ephesus. My main argument is that for this topic I will argue the worship of the triple-faceted goddess of and Hecate, or the triple-faceted goddess of Artemis, Hecate, and Selene, were expressed through the sculptures of Artemis the Great, Mother Goddess, Artemis the Beautiful, and Artemis Ephesia, which influenced magical practices in Ephesus while at the same time exhibiting parallels to Christianity and foreshadowing the shift from polytheism to monotheism. My sub-arguments that I will be presenting is that the Artemis of Ephesus, or Artemis Ephesia, is not the same Artemis of Greek mythology, even though she does share some of the same characteristics. The second sub-argument is that there were 4 main temples for Artemis Ephesia, even though most literature presents that there were only 3. And then my last sub-argument is that there are several parallels to modern Christianity to the cult of Artemis Ephesia in her practice of mysteries, as well as to the practice of mysteries from the cult of Demeter in Greece. Artemis, Gabel. In this slide you see 2 statues of Artemis. The first one is the Greek statue of Artemis, and then the second is Artemis Ephesia. The Artemis Ephesia statue is called Artemis the Beautiful. The biggest difference you see here is her attire. In the Greek statue, she's wearing a short dress with a belt tied around her waist. She's got her quiver of arrows, and she's got a deer by the horns. If you look at the Artemis the Beautiful, she is in a very tight skirt, very restricted. She has 2 beehives on the floor in front of her. And on each side, she has what were at one time deer. But there's a very striking difference between the 2. Now, you can see the connection between the Greek and Ephesus versions by looking at the animals carved on her dress. In the Greek version of Artemis, she was a hunter. And in the Ephesian Artemis, she's more of a protector, but she's also still considered the goddess of wild things, of wild animals. The Artemis of Greece, her sacred animal is the deer. And the Artemis of Ephesus, her sacred animal is the bee. Some interesting facts about the bee is that it is considered to be lucky. It is considered to be a symbol of love, energy, and it's also a messenger. So if you want to send somebody a greeting of love, tell the bee, and the bee will take that message to whoever you need it to go to. Which is interesting because Artemis Ephesia is also considered the goddess of fertility. Now this is shown on the bodice of her dress in the little round objects on her bodice, on her chest. Now these have been called several different things. They're known as bee eggs, bull testicles. They've been called ostrich eggs, and the general consensus is that they're also multi-breast, but nobody can agree on exactly what they are. Artemis was brought to Ephesus in the 7th century BC by the Amazons. There they found a wooden temple dedicated to the Anatolian goddess Cybele. Cybele was also known as Gaia, or some even called her Demeter. They were all pretty much the same, as a mother goddess. Over time, from say the 7th century to 5th century, the local people began to merge Artemis and Cybele into one goddess. And in the 6th century, sorry, my eyes itching. In the 6th century, the temple was raided by the Sumerians and it was destroyed. But that was the first temple of Artemis Ephesia. After the first temple was destroyed, it was repaired in 600, but a flood quickly destroyed any and all repairs that were made. There are no remaining pieces of any of the temples. All we have are artists' renditions and drawings of what the temples possibly looked like. By 550 BC, the cult of Artemis Ephesia had really started to grow. A 10-year building plan was undertaken by an architect by the name of Tryphon. This time the temple was made of marble. It lasted until 356 when it was burnt down by arson. During this time, the three-faceted goddess of Artemis, Hecate, and Demeter was starting to come into worship. After the third temple burnt in 356 BC, the fourth and final temple was built 33 years later in 323 BC. Ephesus was known for its practice of magic. Being that Hecate was the goddess of witchcraft and Artemis was strongly connected to the underworld, the new three-sided goddess became the combination of Hecate, Artemis, and Selene. By three-sided goddess, I mean 3 different goddesses embodied into one. The 3 goddesses represented both the underworld and the moon. Hecate, for the underworld, Hecate represented below the earth, Artemis represented on the earth, and Selene represented in the heavens above the earth. Also, as for their phases of the moon, Hecate represented the dark new moon, Artemis represented the bright full moon, and then Selene represented each stage of the moon in between. And the superstitious Ephesians really connected to that, and that's how they drew all 3 of those goddesses together into one. Now eventually, instead of going for the 3 goddesses in one, they combined it and just had one goddess, Artemis Ephesia. By the time the Goths had come to Ephesus and destroyed the final temple in 268 AD, Christianity had already spread through Ephesus. The changing of the goddess from three-faceted down to one was a type of foreshadowing of what was to come. First, they had the Jewish religion move in, and then Christianity, and then also Islam. All are monotheistic religions. Even though they're centuries apart, there are actually, surprisingly, several parallels between Christianity, the cult of Demeter, and the cult of Artemis Ephesia. All three have what they call mystery practices. First, let me talk about some of the changes in changing images of Artemis Ephesia and in Christianity. Artemis Ephesia started out in Greece as a young maiden, very short clothes, just running here and there, everywhere, doing what she pleased. Then she gets to Ephesus, and her image completely changes to this more mature, matronly protector. And I know this probably sounds like a long shot, but in Christianity we have an image change of Christ coming up too. We often think of Christ as the Renaissance image of Christ, where very pale skin, long light brown, blondish hair, blue eyes. But if you go to Esquipulas, Guatemala, there is a big, beautiful white church, and inside it is a crucifix with a black Christ on it. One of the most amazing things that you would ever see if you ever got the chance. But the whole image of Christ is changing around the world. People aren't just assuming that he was this white guy with long, light brown hair. Another parallel is the concept of 3 in 1, or the Trinity. With Artemis Ephesia, we have the three different goddesses of Artemis, Sybil, Demeter, or Artemis, Hecate, Demeter, Artemis, Hecate, Cabal, or Artemis, Hecate, and Selene. Sorry. And then with Christianity, we got Christ, God the Father, and then the Holy Ghost. Well, each are three sides of the puzzle, but when put together, it's all the same. So the concept of the Trinity goes all the way back to mythology. Final parallel is the concept of death and rebirth. It's not a physical death and rebirth, but a symbolic one. In the cases of the cult of Demeter and the cult of Artemis, initiates go through a ritual where they reenact a process. For the cult of Demeter, they reenact the taking of Persephone, where she's taken by Hades and into the underworld, and Demeter has to go down and get her and bring her back, and she can only come back for a certain amount of time each year. And the same thing with Christians, they go through the same process through baptism. You know, before they go under, it's their life, and then they go through the ritual, they come back up, and they are a new person. Well, in the cults of Demeter and Artemis, before they go through the ritual, they're not a member of the cult just yet, but then they go through the ritual process of the mysteries, and that's like them dying to themselves, shedding their old person, and then they are reborn into the cult and become a new person. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. I hope my brain pauses wasn't too distracting for you, and that you were able to learn at least a little bit about the cult of Artemis Ephesia. I hope everybody has a good break, and see you next semester.